So, hello, and we are excited to have today's guest, none other than Mr. Rod Thompson, hailing from the University of Tulsa, Beggs, Oklahoma, and
Thanks,
just
America.
international fame. Co- Coach, we appreciate you being on today. How's it going?
It's
It's
going
going
good. I
good. I
appreciate you
appreciate you
guys
guys
having me
having me
on,
on,
man.
man.
Very good, man. Well, listen, my first question is I see you just hit the big 5-0. To me, just thinking back, that's at least 30 years in the game, man, between coming on the scene as a high school prep star, going to the University of Tulsa, over the last 30 years, working with some of the most successful players in and around the state of Oklahoma. You're an entrepreneur, obviously a great dad. My question is, how does it feel to be a legend, man? How does it feel to be preparing for the statue to be erected, man?
Man, I appreciate those kind words, but I guess the biggest thing is I think you have your greatest chance to do that when you're operating in something you love to do. And I've been fortunate to realize that operating in what you love to do is the chance for you to have the greatest success. So, man, I'm honored. I'm happy. You talked about the players. You talked about the parents. And I'm just, I'm just country boy from Beggs, Oklahoma, man. And I'm just honored that I was able to help a lot of people the same way that so many people were able to help me.
One question I have is, at what point, obviously you said about doing what we do on a normal basis, you said about serving. At what point did you realize that, you know, you had something special, you had something as far as something that was, you were able to positively impact a lot of people through the sport of basketball, and I would say overall your love of life? At what point did that kind of dawn on you, like, hey, this is something here?
I think when you get those phone calls from those kids or parents that are done playing, you knew it was bigger than basketball or sports. Having those late conversations about life
Mm.
uh, with young players and parents. And Jason, I think one of the biggest keys is, and I thank my parents for this. They always taught me that everybody is important, and I just think with that approach, man, it just has impacted my life so much. I tell people, I was just speaking the other day, and I said, why do we always talk about karma in a bad situation
Mhm.
or a bad thing? Oh man, karma gonna get you. Well, if I do treat people right, I want karma to get me, you know?
Want to
And,
replace
and hopefully
yourself.
the good outweighs the bad. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, but I think that just realizing that and being able to operate in that, man. And I was, talking about Anthony Pritchard the other day, one of my former players, and he's in the G League now. Just having that conversation, and kids may not realize it now, just like we didn't with our parents, the things that they said. And I think that when those conversations are the most valuable, not how you can make that shot, but how you can navigate through this thing called life.
Coach, you brought up parenthood. As someone who's raised two D1 athletes who both have played at state universities, can you boil down some of the things you and your wife did that may have helped provide an advantage for them?
Um, I think the biggest thing, we wanted them to love it. And I didn't want them to play because I played. Now, I was heartbroken when Sydney quit playing basketball. Of course, she went on to play volleyball. Um, but I mean, you guys know this and experience this. You guys have been very successful, two decorated basketball players. And Juwan, I know you've always had to be Jason's little brother, but he good at this, all those things. But I think one of the biggest things is to keep them grounded and have a support system. We're the immediate support system, but the other support system around them to navigate through those tough times. I tell people I didn't fall out of a tree knowing this. I had a lot of experience with former players, a lot of different situations, and just try to be able to apply that. Now, was it perfect? No. Because I say all the time, we're constantly learning. And the one thing that I learned was that as parents, sometimes we can push our insecurities off on our kids and not realize it.
Yeah.
And I'll use Bryce and Sydney. I've been fortunate to know a lot of people. And my main approach was I never wanted anybody to say that Bryce and Sydney got anything because of me.
Mm-hmm.
So times that I probably should have the conversation, I didn't have the conversation. I was like, just figure it out. Just figure it out. And even through that, I've learned through that. But the biggest thing is I also learned to give myself some grace.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give everybody else grace but ourselves.
That's right.
Just like we'll forgive everybody, but a lot of times we look in that mirror and we won't forgive ourselves.
Yep.
And I think that was the biggest key. I remember getting in the car with Bryce going to basketball tournaments, and I was telling him, basketball is not who you are. It's just what you do.
That's good.
You're going to be a 5-star regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with Sydney. And I think that approach a lot of times, because you guys know it, every time somebody sees you, whatever you do well, that's what they identify with you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the basketball player, you're the volleyball player. And I think just instilling them at a young age that you're gonna be successful regardless, And I think that helped. I also think that teaching work ethic, teaching, I tell you another thing I had to change. I used to always tell them, put your head down and work. Now I would say, put your head down, work, and communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Jason is my coach and I'm not doing something right, and I just go in and I just practice left-hand layups, that may not be what Jason wants.
Mm-hmm.
So the communication side, I think, has been huge in growing that, and nurturing that. But most importantly, I tell them, you want to have fun. I mean, look at us three on there. We're all done playing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time we thought we would never be done playing, But I think you guys are great examples of you can be a 5-star when you're done.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to live where I live, not too far from you, Jason, and always dreamed of living here. And I remember taking all my players here and taking up on the hill and looking at the houses, and I said, don't nobody in here dribble a basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So figure out what they do. They still living pretty good,
Yeah.
So I think those are some key things, Juwan, that we try to instill in them growing up through their athletic career.
No, that's good. I find that a lot. Obviously, kids and families come for the training aspect, the skill development, but more often than not, they stay because of the conversations and the communication that they're not
Yes.
able to exercise in other environments, and the importance of just almost being that therapist, that
Yes.
feedback loop, that confidant is so big, particularly for today's athletes, because you can operate in a silo, and I think that's how we used to do it. The old Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant mindset, just
Yep.
put your head down and grind and it'll all work itself out. And that communication piece is huge.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, and you guys know this, if you love your coach, your coach cares about you, there's a different level of trust. There's a different trust level that you have as a coach.
Mm,
You're oftentimes privy to some conversations that parents may not have.
yeah.
And I think it's important for us to, understand that and be open to those conversations because they may not share it with their parents or even their friends.
Yeah. So let's talk about the transfer rules a little bit because that
Hmm.
seems to be, the topic of the day, whether we're talking about college, whether we're talking about, even the ability to switch phone carriers or internet providers. Everybody's used to making a change when things aren't quite right. What's your take on the transfer rule, and what advice do you normally give to parents and players who are considering transferring?
Well, let me start at a college level, because when transfer portal started, all you heard everybody would say, oh, you got to stick it in there. You need to be tough. You're not. And I always said the people who said those things aren't privy to the conversations that I get from a player that says, the coaches call me in and say, hey, it's been good. We're going to help you find somewhere else. So it kind of goes both ways.
Or
I always tell the parents,
even the coach might say, "Hey, I'm out. I'm the
yeah,
one that's waiting."
yeah, I'm transferring with a upgraded pay.
Exactly.
Um, I always say, really sit down and evaluate the situation. Be able to communicate. I had a player one time says, you know, I don't know what he wants from me. I don't know. And I said, well, have you asked him?
Mhm.
No, I ain't asked him. Well, mom, dad, everybody's pouring into him this, and he had never asked his coach.
Mhm.
And he was gonna leave, and he ended up communicating with his coach,
Yeah.
realized the coach loved him a lot more than what he thought, and ended up being a great deal.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen other situations where, you evaluate and you realize it's just not a good fit.
Mhm.
And I think what people forget when it comes to college, it's no different in high school. I always say, focus on the now, preparing for the next.
Mhm.
So when Jace was in elementary school, you're already saying, okay, we're going to work right here and get better in elementary school. We got to figure out what middle school you're going to go to.
Mhm.
He gets to middle school and you're like, hey, okay, let's figure out. Then we go to high school.
Mhm.
But you're always focusing on it now, preparing for the next. And I've seen situations where the kid shouldn't have transferred, had never met adversity,
Mhm.
had never had to be the eighth or ninth guy, had never had to work through those situations where they shouldn't have transferred. And they're older now and they say, yeah, I shouldn't have transferred. I've seen kids transfer that mentally it wasn't a good place.
Mhm.
It was not a good place. And we all know that all coaches are different.
Yep.
All coaches' approach is very different. So, I had a son who transferred. Now, I was the guy that was going to be on the fence that I ain't never transferred, and he
Mhm.
ain't gonna never transfer.
Mhm.
And I say some things you only learn from living.
Yeah.
And when you're in those situations, so I always tell parents, really be able to evaluate the situation, be able to have a conversation and receive. I always say it's important how you receive information.
Yep.
Be able to receive that information from somebody that is not going to be biased,
Yep.
that will tell you like, nah, he better than you.
Yeah.
He better than you right now. Just keep working and keep going and keep pushing yourself. But there are some situations, guys, where it's like, you may need to get out of there.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
a conversation. And I've had kids leave places and mentally they went to a whole nother level and became a better player.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have played enough basketball. You played for 100 different coaches,
Mhm.
and they're all different.
Yeah.
And some it meshed together, some it didn't.
Yeah.
So I'll always just try to tell parents, really evaluate the situation. Have somebody that's not biased, that will sit down and give you the truth and how they evaluate the situation, and then go from there. But you can't stop working. You got to keep going.
No,
Coach,
that's
okay.
exactly the point. I do a couple of, at least two, it seems like nowadays, 2 or 3 what I call school selection audits a month with parents. And the two things you mentioned, number one, most of them have never thought about even having a conversation with the coach. Number two, most of them don't know how to go about that conversation, in a
Yes.
way in which they're open to hearing what the coach actually says, and they can deliver their side of it in a way in which the coach is receptive as well. I just had a guy last week, sophomore, who was dead set on leaving. And after the conversation, he's now happy in his same place where he is.
Yes.
And we've had him go the opposite way as well. But just there's so much trepidation around even that buzzword that we mentioned earlier, communication, that often parents
Yes.
shy away from it.
Yep.
Coach, you talked about the transfer portal, but we know with the NCAA, NIL is a big deal. This extended eligibility is a big deal. If you had a high school son, a high school freshman that wanted to play at the next level, what would be your strategy?
You know, my biggest strategy would always be this. You want to try to be in a situation that prepares you best for where you're trying to go. I use, I use somebody like Bryce. And Bryce, as an 8th grader, was asked to go to every school. Now, of course, I had an advantage because I've been around players. One thing that I knew when he went to Booker T was people don't equate the, say, 6 months you have of practice. I knew he was going to get challenged. I knew he was going to play against the better athletes. Now, at that age, his skill set allowed him to be able to compete in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I had my son and he may not been at a skill level as Bryce or Jace or somebody else, then I start to look. I use myself as an example, Jelon. I grew up in beds. If you wanted to play basketball, you walk out and play basketball. That was it. And I remember growing up, the better players in Tulsa, they all went to Carver.
Mm-hmm.
And in 6th and 7th grade, 8th grade, I wasn't as good as them.
Mm-hmm.
They were better. I would have been probably in 7th grade. I probably would have been 9th on the bench, 8th or 9th on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
But I was at a place where I was able to grow and develop.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to play. Then I was able to come to Tulsa and play against those guys on the AAU team, and I got better. It also gave me confidence, and it allowed me to be able to navigate through. And I always tell this story, and it gives me goosebumps right now, even telling you guys. My first little AAU team down in Babes, guy would pick us up in this little raggedy van, drive all us country dudes, and we came up and played a tournament in Tulsa. Never forget it. And it was at Booker T, the old Booker T gym. And the tournament happened to be there. And I remember we're in the layup line, and on the other end was Leon Wilson, Marshall Gordon, and none of us could even dunk. And we found ourselves, we in the layup line, we had quit shooting layups, and we was watching them dunk. We was like, man. And I mean, they absolutely killed us. And I love basketball so much, and I don't know where it came from. I mean, my parents went to the game and stuff, but they wasn't really into sports. And I was like, I got to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get better. Now, I was in a place where I was able to grow and get better.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, we get to our senior year. They used to have this Parker recreation game. You probably played in it, Jason. And And I remember the same exact court, my senior year, we played the park racing game. I was the first guy outside of Tulsa who was invited to play in that game. I had 32 points and I was the MVP. And I remember people coming up, where you go to school? And I was like, Biggs. And they was like, where is Biggs at? That's our country. But it enlightened me so much because years before I was terrified on this very court.
Against the same
I was like,
people.
man, am I going to be as good as these guys? And so, Juwan, I would say, being able to evaluate it, have an honest assessment about your kid's talent, and plant them in that place where they're able to go. I always say you got to have a finish line mentality.
Yeah.
And so, that finish line of that phase, what is going to get them to that finish line? Is it going to be a place where they're able to grow, mature, get better, play, and so, looking back at my middle school career, I'm so glad I was at a place like Beggs because I probably wouldn't have grown and developed if I was at Carver at that age because I wasn't good enough.
Right.
So I think that's how I've always tried to approach it. We had our AU program, and we always had multiple teams. And people would always say, man, why you had two teams, man? That little raggedy team, why would you even do that? Well, early on, I would have been on the raggedy team.
Yeah.
And I think I developed pretty good. I always tell this story. Connor Dow, who went to Broken Arrow, was at OSU and is now doing well at ORU. And I remember our programs, PWP had merged with Team Griffin. And so the thing was that we would take the better players, they'd be on this team, and then we have another team that would able to be able to grow and develop. And I remember telling Connor, because every kid wants to be on the main team. Want to be on the main team. I got to be on that main team. And I remember sitting down with Connor's parents, and they were the type of parents who were what I like to call untainted. They were just enough way out of sports that they never heard the conversations that they shouldn't hear. Oh, man, Jason hating on you. Juwan hating on you. You need to be on that team.
The politics.
They were oblivious to it. And I remember having a conversation with him. It was would have been his second to the last summer that he would play. And I sit down with him and I said, you don't want to be on that team. Be on this team, get better, and then we'll evaluate it next year. And because they were untainted, they were like, okay, Coach Rod, whatever you say. He went, we came with a plan. This is what you got to get better at. He developed, went that summer with the B team, if that's what you want to call it. Went through his high school season. I told him before the AU started, I said, you're good enough. You'll make that team. Makes the team, becomes a starter, leads the EYBL in 3-point percentage.
Wow.
Now, I firmly believe, and then able to go to OSU and now ORU. But if he had been on that team that year before, he probably wouldn't be getting buckets over there with the praying hands right now.
So it sounds like there's a nexus, even though things have changed in the college scenarios for a lot of high school athletes. It sounds like there's a key nexus between what would be the talent of the athlete as well as the opportunity that the environment allows.
Oh, no doubt about it. And the biggest thing is trying to get that honest evaluation. I think it makes a big, big difference. I say this. I believe we all become better coaches when we have kids. Because we understand a little more now because we have someone who's in it. So we understand that that parent had that sleepless night just like we do. And I had to tell some of my coaches one time, I was like, I don't mind talking to a parent. Now, I don't want to talk to you after every game, but I am open. I feel your anxiety. I know your sleepless nights. And it makes you, I had a college coach one time. And I told him one time, he was talking about the kid. I was like, sit down and, talk to him. Oh man, he ain't doing this. He ain't. Well, then he had a kid and the kid was playing and he called him. He was like, man, you right. I just feel like that place ain't a good fit for him. I said, you remember what you told Johnny? When Johnny said that, you're like, oh man, toughen up, toughen up. And I said, some things we learn from living,
Yeah.
and that don't mean we don't evaluate, that don't mean we don't push kids, that don't mean, but it is to be open and really have an open eye and evaluate and consider all the situations before you just jump and say, Johnny ain't tough enough or Johnny don't want to do this. He may just not be in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's true. And I think those of us who have kids have a little more mercy and grace towards that, because if you play enough, I think we've all been in that situation.
Yeah.
Nothing personal. It's just, it don't fit with what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, good stuff, Coach. Last question I got for you. Talk to us about the new venture, the Big Fish Coalition.
Come on
And
now.
more importantly, how can we get our hands on some of that swag, man?
Come on now. You're right down the road, But as you guys said, I mean, I know, I always say evaluate yourself, know your strengths and weaknesses, know who you are. You guys just understood on this podcast that I'm not a computer guy. That's why they say put people around you. Hey, hire people who you are not. And so I had to get my crew in here, but started Big Fish Coalition a while back. I mean, it really just started as, having fun, fishing with my kids. And it just kind of evolved. And I've always been a guy that wanted to bring people together. It just happens to be through fishing. And the biggest thing is, and we have a couple of slogans that we have: Big Fish Coalition, we don't fish, we catch. Keep your pole in the water. In other words, never quit, never give up. I came up with that because I remember being a young kid. You take a young kid fishing, and if the fish ain't biting, I'm over there throwing rocks. I'm skipping rocks, And my dad be like, boy, keep your pole in the water. You ain't gonna be able to catch no fish if your pole ain't in the water. And last, and I think most importantly, is remember you can't quit, because you're a big fish in somebody's pond. And the biggest thing is, we live in a world today that people feel like they're not a big fish if they don't have so many followers. And we've all had times in our life, maybe going through them now, that we don't feel like a big fish. We don't. We make mistakes, we make wrong decisions, and we sit, and I think we forget that no matter what decision we make, we're a big fish to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And when people get gear, and I always say that, when you get this gear or whatever, every time you look at that, I want you to realize, no matter what is going on, that you're a big fish in somebody's pond. And it's just taken off, man. I've been really blessed. I've had tremendous opportunities with it, and it's brand new. They're developing the website now. I've been offered by 2 companies to buy it, and I'm selling them out my trunk. But again, that's that process that we talk about. And I'll say this, and I'll be done. I always say study the beginning. And I think of you and Juwan. I was able to see your beginning. A lot of people don't. And we only see what we see on social media. They wasn't there when Johnny had that trash can in there lifting up that. I said, I know one thing, that boy gonna be able to shoot over 7-footer.
With the broomstick.
They don't see you guys studying. They don't see all the discipline. You know what they see? All they see is Dr. Jason. All they'll see is Dr. Juwan, a lawyer Juwan. And I say all the time, study the beginning. And we don't see the National Coach of the Year who started off sweeping floors, dreaming to be on that bench. And I think it's so important that not only that people see the beginning, but we make sure we continue to see the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, it's like getting a new pair of shoes. You get them, you be like, yeah, I like these shoes. And pretty soon you throw them in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're able to do that and we're able to understand that we all are called to be big fish. We are, because somebody, no matter what, somebody is looking up to you.
Yeah.
Not saying you're going to be perfect. None of us are. But to be able to continue to work, continue to get better, and that's the message that I really want to, relay through, BFC. And in every aspect of life, somebody is wanting a job, somebody is wanting to be a lawyer. They feel like it's never their turn. Be a big fish, man. And like we say, me in BMD.
Well, listen, man, we appreciate you always bringing knowledge, positivity. Again, going back to my first question, the legend thing wasn't a joke. It's a legacy that you've built. So we appreciate you blessing us with the wisdom today. Thank you to everybody for watching as well. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Love you guys, man. Appreciate you.
All right.
Thanks.
See ya.
Yeah.